Okay, good evening. I'm Natasha Restrepo, and I'm taking the Bachelor in Teaching English as a Foreign Language. This is an explanatory video in regards to the lesson planning we had to make for our previous assignment, or like from 2 weeks ago. So the objectives of this video are, number one, to explain the stages of the lesson, why the different activities, describe some of the material, describe my assessment, and how the proposal accomplished the principles of assessment, tolerance, critical thinking, and how the course helped me articulate the principles of language learning while raising cultural awareness. So basically, I first have to explain the last readings in regards to assessment and the way that we need to assess the cultural awareness principle in class were not part of the readings that we had at the beginning when we first designed the lesson plan. So what I want to say is that for the lesson planning, we had some material, but maybe the objective of the assessment was not as clear as it is now. So basically, what I want to express here is that I believe I accomplished my objectives in regards to the lesson plan, but if I think about the way that cultural awareness was assessed was not actually part of the outcome of the lesson. So this is something that I consider important. I'm not trying to blame the material first given, but somehow it was missing and it was necessary to have it before, so I knew that I actually needed to include it. Okay, so let's continue. The stages of my lesson, basically, as we were asked, we had lesson objectives, we had communicative goal and language objective. We have different strategies for us to be able to cope with the activities, and we had the engagement process, exploration, explanation, elaboration, and the assessment. I'm going to try to be very brief on this information. Number one, on the first stage, which is the active construction and engagement, I had my students explore a little bit the vocabulary in regards to ways to celebrate and commemorate holidays. We also had the work with the IPA pronunciation and the meaning of vocabulary. Then students exchange information. Some of them were sitting with their back to the TV, so the classmates in front of them could actually describe some of the pictures they had prepared before about vocabulary, and according to the description they could actually recall and say some of the celebrations, or ways of celebrating, like praying, sending cards, remembering the dead, wearing costumes, set of fireworks, and marching parades. All right, we continued with exploration. So students had to first see some pictures, and then according to a conversation model, they had to identify some of the information they could use in order to explain what these pictures represented. And then like from the conversation, we would have an implicit part of the grammar, so they would be asked to identify some special grammar in the conversation, and then in that way students will be triggered to explore a little bit more about the grammar box, so they could actually identify some aspects that they were going to be asked about, such as the relative pronoun and the adjective clauses of the grammar they were meant to have. Then in order to understand how to use this grammar, they were shown a strategy, and this is a very part of the stage or the process of the class, because the strategies are meant to help the students develop like better cognitive processes in their learning, and like have different ways to cope with information, organize information. So basically we have a graphic organizer, and the different Kala steps were presented throughout the lesson and this specific part, so they could work with this one, and then we would jump into a controlled communicative event, so they could prepare themselves a little bit, and then they could work on a more spontaneous communicative event, which was related to some celebrations around the world or holidays that they had to describe. So the outcome of this was to find the most interesting celebration. The students were given some time to find out about these celebrations online. So if it is in regards to cultural awareness, I think students had the opportunity to explore other celebrations, other cultures, something interesting that they found, interesting because it was different for them. But there is no assessment or chart that is explicit enough for them to realize like, oh, okay, so now I have learned about this culture, and if I have to compare to my culture, I have found this, or I feel like this. Unfortunately, as I said, it was about cultural exploration, but students could not actually identify, I guess, of course, the teacher is in charge of making them identify how much they have actually changed their perspectives. It happens, it's part of the process, but is not explicit as maybe it could have been. It could have been something like, okay, guys, in the part of the assessment or the outcome, like, what was the most interesting celebration you find out about, and why, and how do you think discovering about this can actually help you understand about the world you have around, or what do you think it's important to learn about cultures? There could have been a more explicit question, I have to accept, and that could actually lead them to a better reflection. I know that discovering about other cultures will make them curious, will make them respect, will make them realize they're not the only ones. But yeah, I'm completely aware. We could have like worked on a assessment format that was not like based only on grammar structures, pronunciation, and vocabulary, which is basically what I did. Now, I think my video is getting a little bit long. I know it was 7 minutes maximum, but okay, I promise I'll try to finish. So I have described the activities, the stages, the assessment. The assessment was based on structures, vocabulary, and pronunciation, not really cultural awareness. And and how the course has helped me articulate the principles of language learning while raising cultural awareness. I have certainly learned a lot and understood how important it is just to obtain, acknowledge about other cultures. In my case, in a very personal perspective, I have traveled a lot, and I have read a lot, and I keep reading, and I keep myself eager to know more about other cultures, because that's basically it's part of my lifestyle. I love learning about other cultures. I love exploring. Travel so much is because I love exploring, and I love being able to convey to other people what my country is, what we are, in terms of our traditions, what we represent, and I like people around the world to be aware, as an ambassador, like cultural ambassador, to realize that some of these stereotypes they have heard about Colombian people are not like that. Not always. We're not that people. That image they have like gotten from the TV or from just a few TV shows or movies or news. And the same way happens to me when I have the opportunity to travel to see and find out about other people, other cultures. I learn. And every time I go to class and we have lessons like this, I have like a story, an anecdote, something I can share with my students so they can open up a little bit more, like their minds, and to be an eye opener too, so they can actually feel and realize how important it is to see the world, to explore a little bit more, to comprehend, to observe before criticizing, to listen before saying something.